Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this episode I will show you how I painted this melamine desk. I know painting melamine is very difficult. People are always asking if it can be done, how you can do it. So in this video I will show you all the steps and all the product that you have to use in order to paint melamine. Before we start, I would like to say thank you to my new subscribers. It's very good to see that your content that gets more attention. So yeah, once again, thank you all for being part of this channel. And now going back to the painting, I will show you what I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use this primer from Zinsser. It's very easy to purchase this in UK. I'll use a paintbrush and a roller, and I will use an electric sander to sand the surface. If you can use a paint sprayer, it's even better, but I don't think that many people will have a paint sprayer. This is why I choose to show you how we do this by a roller and with a brush. One thing that I want to mention is that this primer is very smelly, so ideally to do this first coat of paint outside. If you can't do it outside and you're gonna do it indoors, then make sure you open all the doors and all the windows and you put a mask or a respirator on. Now we're gonna start with the first step of the job, and that is the sanding. So very important step, don't skip it. You definitely need to sand the melamine before the painting. If you don't have an electric sander, you can do it by hand, but like I said, this is a step that you can't skip. Melamine is not very friendly with the painting, so it definitely needs to be scratched so the paint can actually stick properly. I am using 150 grit, so you can see straight away the surface, it gets this color, so that means it gets scratched from the actually sandpaper, and we know our primer will stick there properly. And because we all know time is money, the client decided not to paint the back of the desk and the side of the desk, so basically the sides that you can't see once the desk is installed. So apart from those areas, all the desk will have to be sanded down as you see per these images. If you want to see all the materials that I used and where you can get them from, I will leave a couple of links in the descriptions of the video. You need to be careful what kind of paint roller you're gonna choose for this job. You need one that is made for fine surfaces, so not your roller that you use to paint obviously the walls and the ceiling. You need something that will go for gloss painting or for finish painting. Okay, so now sanding is complete. Let me show you how they look. You see all the surfaces been sanded. You can see they scratched it, and we're just gonna start cleaning them. So we're gonna use these wet wipes to actually clean them. Even if we obviously use a sander with a dust extraction, there still are some dust residues on the desk. So you can see now when we wipe it down that it actually some kind of like dust residues. So we clean all these residues before we apply the first coat of paint. Again, this is a very important step because if you're going to leave that dust on the surface, obviously your paint won't stick very well. And like I said it before, melamine is not very friendly with the actual paint. If you have sanded the surface by hand and obviously didn't have a dust extraction, you will have a lot more dust than we have on this video. So I recommend to use a brush to obviously brush off all the dust excess, and then use this wet wipes or a damp cloth just when you have just a little dust residue. So this is the primer that we use. Is a product called BIN from Zinsser. It's easy to purchase in UK. It dries in 10-15 minutes, so basically in 30 minutes you can do 2 coats. Is a very strong product. It does stick to pretty much anything, and I use it a lot in the past and it's never failed. You will have to shake the can very well because the paint seems to settle on the bottom. This primer is a shellac base paint, so it's not your typical water base or your typical oil based, so you can't clean your roller or your brush with wet spirit or with water. It's a special cleaner for this type of paint. You will have to get that from the same supplier. They do a cleaner especially for this paint. This is a very thin paint, so you have to be careful because it does like to run everywhere, and also it doesn't need to be diluted. All the areas that will be a bit more hard wearing, like the tops, I will do 2 coats of this primer with no sanding in between. If the time in between the coats is obviously longer than the paint takes to dry to actually totally cure, then I will suggest to do a bit of sanding in between. So basically, if you do 1 coat today and 1 coat tomorrow, I would suggest to do a light sanding in between. But if you do 1 coat now and 1 coat in an hour, I won't do any sanding because it's not needed. But you will definitely need to do sanding in between coats when you start using a different paint. So in this case, when you're gonna start using the undercoat, which is the second type of paint that we're gonna use for this painting, we'll definitely have to do some sanding in between coats, especially because it's a different base paint and we want to make sure that the second obviously base will stick to the first one. When you're using obviously a roller and a brush, make sure you don't leave any marks, any lines behind you, because they might show in the next coat of paint. If you do some and you realize after obviously the paint's been dry that you did some lines or some brush marks, then you have to obviously take a piece of sandpaper and sand them down and make it to look nice and flat. Otherwise, like I said, they will show through the actually finish surface. Like I said before, using a paintbrush and a roller might not give you the same finish like using a sprayer, but if you use them correctly and they are the correct stuff and the correct paint and the correct methods, you can get a pretty good finish that won't be far off by using obviously a sprayer. Also, I want to say that there are probably other products on the market claiming that you can paint melamine with them. I haven't tried them all, so I can't say how good they are, but I can tell you that I tried this a few times and it's never failed me. So we did 1 coat on the desk. Like I said, we are going to do 2 coats on the top and on the side, and just 1 coat underneath. I do want to mention that I'm not sponsored by any of these products that I'm using. I'm just showing you what I'm using. Like I said, I'm happy with these products. If you want to use something else, I'm pretty sure there are other products on the market, but like I said, I haven't tried them and I can't tell you how good they are. You can test a product by obviously painting it on one side of the surface, leave it to dry, and then you start obviously scratch it and see how good it is. In this image, I will show you how I use my fingernails to actually scratch the paint off, and you can see the paint is not going anywhere. You can see it's very strong, and it's only like an hour after it's been painted on. Now we start painting the undercoat, which is the second base paint that we're gonna use. Is a different base. This is an oil base. You will have to dilute this with a little bit white spirit. So basically how this works is the more thinner you do the paint, the better result you will have in finish. But at the same time, the thinner is the paint, the more coats of paint you will have to do. So you just have to put a slightly amount of white spirit in the paint to make it actually thinner, so it does not leave any marks on the surface. I can't really tell you how much you have to dilute the paint. It's all depend of what paint you get, and some of them are thicker than other. But I will suggest just do a small amount and don't do the whole paint at once, because if you do it too thin, then you can't take it back. So this is how the desk look like with the undercoat on. So basically we still have one more coat of paint to do, which is the final coat. We'll take the desk inside because all these flies, they seems to like new paint, so obviously we don't want them in the finished surface. We'll take them in, we'll sand them again when they dry, and then we'll apply the final coat. This is just a slight sanding. Okay, so the desk is in, is been painted with the final coat of paint, which is an eggshell. It's also an oil-based paint. We like to use oil-based paint where possible because I just think they give you a much better finish. You can see, I think it looks great. I think it looks very good. Not far off from being sprayed. Like I said, the secret is do as many coats as needed, deal with the paint where necessary, and sand in between coats, and you will have a very good looking product. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did like the video, please like, share and subscribe, and I will see you next time with my new video. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.